Alright everyone, we start off today, of course, with a little announcement. I am here in the Netherlands at the moment. Yes, indeed, as you can tell from the change in decor. Also a little bit of a change of venue. The kitchen table and the office table were swapped out, so this is a location. But actually, the stairs behind me might provide some sound dampening, so yeah, maybe it's not so bad after all. The lighting, I need to do something about, I understand that. We're talking about O.J. Simpson first. Of course, he died the other day, or it was announced that he had died. His family announced that he had died of cancer. He had been diagnosed a couple of years ago. He was kind of low-key about it. And O.J. Simpson, very interesting person. He lived a very strange life. Of course, he was a football star originally in a bunch of commercials. You know, they nicknamed him Thejuice because O.J., and he was an excellent footballer. But then he decides to, kill somebody, and the rest was history, and you had basically for an extended period in the middle of the 1990s, this is 94 I think it was, O.J. Simpson was basically all you saw on TV. And yes, the cat is attempting to antagonize me. Yes, well, if you're going to antagonize me, then then you're going to have to come up here now, aren't you? Oh yes, people are going to see the fluff. Yes, people are going to see the, you can talk about O.J. Simpson too. She's trying to weigh in. But O.J. Simpson then goes on trial, and the trial was a shit show from the beginning. Everything about it was wonky. There was obviously a racial premise to it. People were threatening to riot if he was found guilty because, oh my God, you don't have the evidence, and he's black, so clearly you're racist. Then you had other people, of course, who were like, come on, it's cut and dry that he's guilty. And I believe that too. I think sane people do. But I would point out that if I was on the jury, I probably would have voted not guilty too. Not because of any racial motive, but because of the fact that the prosecution was so bungled. They mishandled evidence. They tainted evidence. At one point, I think some of the DNA evidence was left in an unsealed plastic bag in the hot sun for an extended period. And then you had the whole glove moment. Which they should have known better than to do. Yes, we took gloves that clearly have shrunk, and we told OJ to put one of them on, and try as he might, he's incapable of getting them, past the second knuckle practically, because big hands. They bungled it, and so it was impossible to find him guilty based on that evidence. And there were a lot of people that were predicting that, and I mean, you should have seen the betting pools and stuff at the time, and I was just old enough to actually sort of remember that. The slow speed chase with the white SUV, and all of these other crazy things that went on. And then, of course, he's acquitted. And, everyone's up in arms, and OJ becomes a household term even more. And, it really sparked a lot of the racial revivalism of the 90s. Things got more edgy. You listen to Stern or any of these other broadcasts that were popular at the time, or you'd listen to the news, or say there was a racial angle was dragged into almost every bit of bants about O.J. Simpson and the entire case. Then he gets arrested for burglary because he claims that some dude stole stuff from him, and he decided to get together with a posse and go and take it back, and then he ended up doing some time in prison for that, and people were like, oh, thank God he's behind bars. Then he gets released. And that was not that many years ago. I think it was 2012 or so that he was released, I think. Or maybe a little bit after. Or was that when he was jailed? Can't quite recall. But then his life takes an even more crazy turn. Then he becomes a Twitter sports commentator and roasts people online. By the way, it never at any time since then, and not in a deathbed confession or anything either, did he ever say, well, yeah, I did it. I'm dying anyway, so I'm going to clear my conscience. So, there's that as well. Very interesting individual, probably murderous, although again, he was acquitted. And that's the other thing that always pisses me off. People say, well, OJ's guilty of murder. Yes, but he was also acquitted. You can commit a crime but be acquitted by a jury or a judge, and your name is effectively clear from that point forward. It does not matter that you are guilty or not guilty. Look at the way that our legal system works, by the way. People complain about it. Well, then you should be talking about judicial reform and things like that. Certainly, you need to keep more of a close eye on prosecutions and the cops in the O.J. Simpson case as it pertains to evidence harvesting and maintaining it in a form that's actually useful for trial. Because it seems like there was an awful lot of bungling there, and some people read into that, well, they bungled it on purpose. The LAPD and these other groups thought, well, if OJ goes to jail, there are going to be race riots. You know, it'd be the second version of Rodney King or the third version of George Floyd or something like that, which may have been the case. And so some people speculate that they deliberately threw the case and deliberately did a bad job. Because, you know, then they're like, oh, the jury's not going to find him guilty now because, you know, they're going to be instructed that this evidence isn't even really admissible. And so without any real tangible evidence or a witness or something like that, hey, that's perfectly fine. We let him off the hook. We don't have to deal with thousands of people rioting in the streets, or in that case, probably hundreds of thousands. They might have been right, too. It'd be interesting if you could, like, go back to moments in history, change the timeline, and then observe what happens to get like a comparison shopping thing going on. Yeah, there probably would have been some riots, although you know, there were a bunch of protests after the decision anyway. As the verdict was being read out, a lot of the news coverage actually switched to the crowds that had been gathered at the courthouse or at other locations to see people's reactions, and everyone was waiting with bated breath. Yeah, back before the general rise of home internet, by the way. People were glued to their TVs, and it was an interesting spectacle at the time. Some of you are too young to really have remembered it. You know, I was on the edge. I was born in '88, so I was still a little kid at the time. But I can remember the OJ stuff. I can remember listening to the radio, and God, I can't remember which commentator it was. Unfortunately, they didn't have Stern on, so I think it was Don Imus, actually, and he talked about that incessantly for some time. So yeah, O.J. Simpson, dead at, 76, I believe, of cancer, and never having confessed or repented, of course. You know, he's not going to bother repenting of it publicly if he continuously maintains that he's not guilty, so we'll see. Maybe he wrote some memoir up or something, and we're going to get some even more crazy shit. Considering his penchant for gathering attention, we probably will. That's about all. Peace out.